Hello, everyone. Harry here to talk about where we stand after day 4 of the E Jean Carroll trial. And where we stand immediately is that E Jean Carroll's 3-day testimony is finished. She had not quite a day of direct examination from her counsel, and then 2 days from Joe Tacopina, Trump's counsel, with a short redirect by hers. And now that centerpiece, dramatic centerpiece of the trial is finished. Let me talk first about that and then what's coming next and a few other things that have happened. All right. Remember the big organizing principle here. I've stressed it repeatedly. Donald Trump cannot testify. It would be a bloodbath. I just thinking most recently, there are going to be some victims who go up there, and they're among the 26 victims that Trump is reported to have assaulted. You could just start with, did you assault her? If he lies and says no, which is his public stance, I think that they would, the either New York or the Southern District of New York for the feds would very seriously consider perjury charges. And there are just many of his, 30,000 lies chronicled by the Washington Post that are so clean and that he either would have to swallow or commit perjury on, and it's just out of the question. It would be a catastrophic situation and also humiliating. So he's not going to testify. That means that Tacopina's big chance has come and gone. It was the cross-examination of E Jean Carroll herself. How'd she do? Pretty well. Now, details came out that we hadn't known that a jury will consider and he can argue about. They first meet and it's kind of a playful, even flirtatious banter. She doesn't report it for many, many years. There's suggestion that she maybe profited from it. But remember, he's got to show it's totally made up. That has to be Tacopina's theory. It can't be that it was consensual or a he said, she said in the real sense of the term. He's got to show that Trump, that he's got to have the jury believe that it's been totally made up by E Jean Carroll, and he can't have Trump on the stand to say it. He can't have Trump stand up and put his credibility, such as it is at issue, and say, this never happened. And you can look the jury in the eye and say, can't do it. So it had to be what came through E Jean Carroll. Now, cross-examination is a surgical art, and it's easier said than done. It's a beautiful thing, an engine of truth when it's done well. And I would say Tacopina did about a B-. So yes, he got some points out, including the details I discussed and other possible motivations. But good cross-examination is surgical, make the points and move on. And it's especially with a sexual assault victim or alleged one, it's super important to have the right tone. And in these respects, he erred. He was too often browbeating. It's okay to pick a few spots to try to go tough, but he basically went into browbeating mode too much, sort of played into the narrative that I think jurors who are inclined to support Carroll will have, which is, basically old white guy beating up and not believing a credible victim. And he just did stuff more than he needed. He repeated things and he did more than he needed. For example, he talked about, you really made this up from an NBC Law and Order episode, right? Which is crazy. You don't have to show that she got the idea from that if you're trying to show it's a hoax. And it just seemed silly and it got slapped around on redirect. Also on redirect. So important to end on a high note. And what he chose to do was highlight a quote where she said she's doing well, fabulous now with all the support, and she's really being buoyed by people, and it really helps. And I guess it's to show, oh, you didn't really suffer all that much. So that's where he ended the whole thing, and he walked into a total haymaker when on redirect, Carol's lawyer was able to, get her to elicit very credible and moving testimony about her very hard journey back to equanimity and the great gratitude she feels for all the support she's gotten. And it just made him seem cavalier and an asshole. So, some real mistakes there. And again, was the whole ball game for him. So I think she's a bit of a quirky plaintiff, I would say. She, came across as like she's gossip columnist, liking certain kinds of attention or being kind of a real New York figure. But she really stayed herself, I think, and stayed within herself while giving very compelling reasons why. In fact, she didn't report that she's from a generation that keeps your chin up and doesn't complain. He asked, why didn't you scream? And she was able to say, questions like that are why so many women haven't reported. And by the way, I don't know if this will come out in expert testimony, but I think the figures are something like only 30% of rape victims report it. So anyway, he had his one big shot at Tacopina, and he didn't do great. He scored some points. You can imagine among the 9 in there thinking about, reasons to doubt it, but so important to always emphasize it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt case. It's a civil case, and it's, 50-50, and it's her versus Trump, who won't even be there, and there's evidence coming to just put him in a terrible light. Let me talk briefly about that evidence. So we're going to hear now from 2 friends of hers to whom she reported this contemporaneously. And again, your Tacopina, you have to be able to use the cross-examination and nothing else to make the jury believe that all of them are in it together and totally making it up. So he's going to have to completely destroy their credibility, but without being overbearing, which doesn't seem to be within his job description, really. And one of them seems especially credible to me and dangerous to Trump because she is someone who has a good, really concrete story about deciding not to go down to Mar-a-Lago to do a piece on him after and we know when this was, after learning about Trump's conduct. She's also someone who told her, one of the friends said, report it to the police, and the other said, whatever you do, don't report it to the police, you'll be ruined. So that will, feed into her narrative. Then we're going to get 2 victims who have similar stories to E Jean Carroll's. One on a plane that he just pounces on and grabs by the genitals, one at Mar-a-Lago, and it's just going to make him look like, a vile man. And again, what's Tacopina going to do? If Trump were there, maybe he'd try to deny it. Good luck with it, though. He's going to have to, make it seem like they're totally making it up. And then we go to the Access Hollywood tape, which Judge Kaplan has held, comes in. And, at the time, it just seemed generally nasty and lurid, but it's actually very probative, it seems to me. Here's a guy who says, when you're famous, you can do whatever you want, including grab them by the genitals. And it's completely consistent with a guy who would banter a bit, then close a dressing room door and boom, just, launch a vicious sexual assault. And then from there, that's most everything. There'll be some expert witnesses about why women don't report, other things like that, and going to damages, how much she was harmed. And now you come to Trump's big chance to defend. He's got nothing. He'll have nothing because there's only 2 witnesses on his list. One is a expert on some aspect of what I just talked about. The other is Donald Trump, and he won't be there, and he won't show up, and the jury will want to hear from him, and they'll be inflamed. So look, it's not a perfect case. It's a case that 20 years ago might not have been brought, that even currently might not be brought as a criminal case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But it's going in well, and she's really, I think, making herself seem credible and sympathetic, and he, of course, is doing nothing to rebut it. There was a motion for a mistrial that Tacopina made at the beginning of the day, Monday, basically an 18-page screed saying the judge, you're being prejudiced against us. Judge denied it, so that's done, but it's an issue for appeal. There's another interesting motion was filed under seal by the plaintiffs over the weekend. We don't know anything about it or where it stands, but it's somewhere there. Okay, so there you have it, a longer account, but that's where we are at trial. This is kind of trials. We ought to think first and foremost about being disputes between people, but this is becoming a kind of social bellwether. And are we at a point in society where a jury can understand and that a woman can first begin a kind of jocular conversation, and it doesn't in any way justify it when it turns into a rank sexual assault, and that can happen. And then second, why a woman might not report or take many years to do it. Those aspects are a little bit on trial themselves, and I think a verdict for Carroll will be taken as a sign of social progress on those parameters. Okay, so much happening, but not so much longer, and the case is, hurtling forward, really, especially since there's nothing to the defense case, and we'll know pretty soon. And if there is a verdict for E Jean Carroll, real question: does it serve as a kind of broad social indictment of Trump and an establishment of him as a sexual predator? Or does all of MAGA and the Republican Congress and Trump himself just sort of ignore it? All righty. So much to follow, and I think a really important trial and a really important phase in the overall path of accountability of one Donald Trump. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.